What is going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here for an NFL playoffs recap. It feels so good to say that. Repping the Cowboys today for my dad, big Cowboys fan, and also Dilly Vanilli. We have a live stream coming tonight. Cowboys, Seahawks. Make sure you guys check that out. Kevil and Dylan will both be on it. But today, I'm here to talk about and recap the big game in the AFC today. That was the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts dominated this game throughout. They dominated on offense early on, and their defense shut the door in the second half. Pretty much Deshaun Watson had nowhere to go. They clamped down on DeAndre Hopkins and really took away a lot of the passing options that the Texans were really going to. All of the schemes that I thought the Colts would be all over, that's exactly what happened. The Colts thoroughly dominated this game from start to finish, and we're able to close it out with a strong rushing attack from Marlon Mack, a few plays down the field from T.Y. Hilton, and overall a really impressive performance from their defense on the road. It's one thing to have Andrew Luck and this Colts offense looking really good, this offensive line blocking up front, a really tough front four to block. You know, you're talking about Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt, DJ Reader, all these guys that they have to block up front and giving the time to Andrew Luck for Andrew Luck to make plays. But then on the other side of that, for the Colts defense to come out here and only give up 7 points, that's extremely impressive. If you're a Colts fan, I think you are really impressed, really happy, and I think you're pretty positive going into next week against Kansas City. Obviously, we already know that's going to be the matchup. So the Kansas City Chiefs will be playing the Indianapolis Colts, and that's going to be a fascinating game. If you guys remember watching my playoff predictions, the entire playoff predictions, I predicted that I wanted the Texans to win this game, even though I predicted the Colts to win. I wanted the Texans to win because I felt like it would be better in terms of just the divisional round matchups. I feel like the Chiefs would have had a more difficult time with a team like the Chargers or the Ravens, being that they've already played really close games and even lost to one of those teams. But now that I really look at it, I think the Colts might be the toughest matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs after watching the way their defense played on the road against the Texans. Now, the Texans offense certainly isn't the Kansas City Chiefs offense, but you're dealing with a similar style of quarterback with the mobility. You're looking at this Colts defense, and they're very well schooled. Eberflus has done an excellent job on defense coaching. They never give up big plays. They are capable of taking away a receiver in a game like DeAndre Hopkins, and maybe next week Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, whichever they decide to take away. So I think if you're the Colts, and obviously they have an offense and also a rushing attack that can take over a game. So if you're a Colts fan, you're sitting here and you're saying, okay, we have a better defense than the Chiefs. If our offense can keep pace with their offense, we potentially have a chance to go on the road and upset the Chiefs. So when looking at it, I was really wrong when picking the Colts to be a team that didn't match up well with the Chiefs. So I'm very fascinated going forward and looking at that game in next week's action for the AFC divisional playoffs. But today, let's talk about this game. Leave your comments. Let me know what you guys think about this game. I'm going to go through the statistics, the big-time performers, and my thoughts on the game overall. So the Colts take it 21-7. The Colts dominated, as I brought up, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick for Andrew Luck. He also ran in some critical downs for first downs, 8 rushes for 29 yards. He is capable of doing that, and he only really takes off when he needs to, and he did it well. He had an 88 passer rating in this game. I don't think Andrew Luck, was spectacular. I thought the Texans defense actually did a really nice job at taking away T.Y. Hilton down the field for the most part. They did a pretty good job. I thought that Andrew Luck in this game, if the Colts were going to win, was going to have like 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. But instead, he only has a low 200s and 2 touchdowns and a pick, which was caused by a J.J. Watt swat. And the Colts only scored 21 points. If I'm coming into this game thinking the Colts are only scoring 21 points, I'm probably saying, okay, the Texans probably won this game. But that wasn't the case. The Colts won this game, and they won it by double digits. So if I'm a Colts fan, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, our offense played decent, They played well in the first half, but they really weren't capable of doing anything in the second half. And our defense came through with a big victory. And I think that's the number one thing to take away is that not only is this Colts offense dangerous and they can run the ball, they can pass the ball, they have balance, but also their defense can make plays. They can take away the football, they can get pressure, and they can shut down receivers. So Andrew Luck, of course, had a pretty good game and was accurate all night long. He was the better quarterback of the two. Even though, Deshaun Watson had more yards, he did have 76 rushing yards. Andrew Luck was the far better player in this game, just from a decision-making standpoint, from an accuracy standpoint, from making the plays when they needed to be made. Andrew Luck looked like an MVP. And that's something in playoff football that not a lot of people actually look at closely. You need to look at the actual plays they make, the actual performance outside of the statistics. Sometimes for a quarterback in the playoffs, throwing for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks is a great game depending on what they're asked to do within the game plan. And I thought Andrew Luck did execute that game plan very well. Deshaun Watson, on the other hand, I thought struggled a ton with his accuracy. He had a 69 passer rating in this game. He did make a couple of plays near the end of the game to get them back in it. He made a couple of throws, but overall, there were some open receivers he missed. There was a big 4th down in the game where he missed DeAndre Hopkins in the end zone. He was very inaccurate. He didn't look calm and composed. The offensive line certainly didn't help. I'm not trying to say that it was all on Deshaun Watson. And obviously, only having one legitimate target in the passing game, Keke Cote played well. Don't get me wrong, but you're not really usually asking that guy to be your number 2 or number 1 receiver. DeAndre Hopkins had a tough time really getting separation against these Colts corners, and they did a good job of taking him away. And once you take away Hopkins, we've seen in Watson's career, he struggles to go to his other receivers because their other receivers aren't really that talented. But Watson, like I said, struggled with accuracy, made some bad decisions, got sacked, held onto the ball too long. And I felt like Bill O'Brien and this offensive game plan for the Texans was a little bit too simple. It was too predictable. And I thought that they just kind of were lackluster in the first half. They really had no sense of urgency. They weren't really attacking the Colts in any way. And the thing about the Texans is, and the Colts specifically, the Colts defense needs to be taken advantage of by dinking and dunking and going down the field, because the Colts play a cover 2 style of defense. So to beat the cover 2 style of defense, you need to make very composed throws. You need to make smart, accurate throws. You need to make short passes more often than not. You probably need to dump it off to the back, dump it off to the tight end, get the yak, right? So Deshaun Watson was trying to go for the big play a little bit, trying to hold onto the ball and wait for guys to get open. And against the Colts defense, they play that scheme where it's really difficult to find holes deep, because that's what they're trying to play. They're trying to not give up the big play. And I thought the Colts defense played excellent in that regard. Their corners were all over it, and they played a good game. But yeah, Deshaun Watson struggled. I thought Andrew Luck was good. Running game-wise, Marlon Mack looks like a breakout performer in these playoffs. If they're going to win next week against the Chiefs, he needs to have a similar performance. 148 yards, 6.2 yards per carry. They controlled the pace of the game because Marlon Mack ran the ball effectively. And that's very difficult to do against the Texans. I did not expect this to happen against the Texans. The Texans defense is 4th against the run all year long, and Marlon Mack just continued to run, gashing them. The offensive line was spectacular today for the Colts. It continues to prove that they're elite. And again, they dominated the front of the Texans. And that was the whole thing. If the Texans front if they were going to win, the Texans front needed to play well, and they didn't play well enough to get the victory. Receiver-wise, I thought Hilton played a good game. He had, I think, 3 or 4 catches on 3rd down. He had 5 catches in the game for 85 yards. Dontrell Inman looked really good, and some of his routes kind of broke some guys' ankles. 4 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown. Eric Ebron had a touchdown early in the game, and Chester Rogers contributed in a few little catch and run situations. 4 catches for 46 yards. Defensively, they all played well. I can't really say anybody played poorly for the Colts, but their front played really well. Muhammad played well. I thought Hunt was in the backfield a lot. Of course, you have to talk about Darius Leonard, who led the team in tackles once again. Their safeties were great. They did have a couple of injuries in this game, but I think they should be okay. We'll have to monitor that going into next week. But I do really want to credit the corners for the Colts. I think that's been a big question mark for them before the season. And then in this game, could they really handle DeAndre Hopkins? And they did. So I got to give them credit there. The running game for the Texans was very inconsistent. There was nothing going, and they didn't really try to run it a lot, which was puzzling. Because early in the game, obviously they were down 14-0 pretty quickly, but they didn't really commit to the run. Outside of running it with Deshaun Watson, I mean, Lamar Miller only had 5 carries. He did have 8 catches, but he only had 5 carries. Alfred Blue only had 2 carries, and Dante Foreman only had 1 carry. So looking at it, they had less than 10 carries from their running backs. The Texans can't play a passing game all game. The Texans are a team, an offensive line that needs to run the ball. They don't have an offensive line that can have 40-plus snaps passing the ball. They're just not a good enough pass-protecting offensive line, and when that happens, the Colts were able to get after them just with a 4-man rush. They really didn't blitz a lot. They did it on a couple of third downs, but not very often. So that was just not in the Texans' game plan, and once they went towards that, that was a losing strategy for them because they were never going to win this game without running the ball and staying balanced and in keeping the Colts front off guard. Looking at the receivers, Hopkins had a really poor game, 5 catches for 37 yards. Lamar Miller had 8 catches for 63 yards. A lot of that came in the fourth quarter. And Kiki Kote was really impressive. 11 catches for 110 yards and that touchdown, which was almost reverse. But he played well. I'll give him that. Hopkins, I just think the thing about Hopkins is I've always said he's a really good receiver. And I'll always say he's a really good receiver. But to me, I'm never going to put him in that category where he's truly elite because, yes, he's great at going up and catching the ball. He's great at catching the ball in traffic. But to me, DeAndre Hopkins is not a guy that's going to consistently separate. He's not a guy that's going to beat the double team occasionally. When you have a really good corner on him or you double team him, he's pretty much taken out of the game for the most part. Unless he makes a ridiculous catch. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to break a huge play. So to me, that's my opinion. I've always stood by that opinion. If you guys know me, you know that opinion. But to me, I think it showed again. In a lot of big games against defenses that know how to game plan against the Texans, Hopkins doesn't have a huge impact. And I think without Will Fuller here, we really saw that, you need another receiver to help this offense open up, especially because this offense is not very this offense isn't very creative in any way in the passing game. It's very basic, and they rely on Deshaun Watson to make a lot of plays. Defensively, their defense played poorly in the first half, but the second half they stepped up, they made plays. But again, 0 sacks. J.J. Watt didn't get enough pressure. Jadeveon Clowney was pretty much non-existent in this game. Their blitzes kind of got there a little bit in the second half, but I thought their secondary in the second half played well. In the first half, they were leaving guys open, really got out-schemed, and just didn't play well overall. And their third down defense was a huge thing. I know the Colts were number 1 in third down offense, but their third down defense was horrible, and they did not come to play. So the third down offense for the Colts was a key difference maker in this game. And that's going to be huge going against the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's pretty much the breakdown for most of the players and the game. If you guys have any questions regarding the game, let me know. But I'm going to go to the comments real quick. Just recapping who scored. Eric Ebron had a 6-yard touchdown to start it off against from Andrew Luck. A Marlon Mack 2-yard touchdown, which I thought was a really well-blocked play to the left side. Dontrell Inman 18-yard touchdown in the second quarter. And then no scores until the fourth quarter where Kiki Kote for the Texans gets the only touchdown for the Texans. Looking at the stats, 9 for 14 on third down for the Colts compared to 3 for 13 on third down for the Texans. And the Texans went for fourth down 5 times, only converted twice. And a lot of those situations were within 4 to 3 yards, and they did not make them. 3 sacks for the Colts, 0 sacks for the Texans. Those are key stats that were kind of big difference makers. And huge time of possession in the first half for the Colts. That was a big difference maker as well. So let's go to the chat. Starting off with the Elephant. He says, that was brutal. Kevin Durkant says, Texans took a fat L. Michael is saying, go Saints. Watson played scared. We have a comment. Watson played scared. I don't know if he played scared. Another Elephant says he was lost. Dame says Deshaun also looked bad. So a lot of people on the Deshaun hate train here today. But yeah, he didn't look comfortable. I wouldn't say he was scared, but because of the offensive line and their inept ability, he wasn't really able to be confident and calm in the pocket. And that definitely threw him off. And I agree. His accuracy was horrible in this game. Kevin Durkant says Colts are beating the Chiefs next week. I think that's a possibility. Someone else says Watson is nothing like Mahomes. Mahomes has way more weapons. Chiefs can't stop anybody, says Kevin Durkant. Trivia says Colts will win next week. So everybody's jumping on the Colts bandwagon. Trivia says T.Y. Hilton is better than Tyreek Hill. Come at me. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I do really like T.Y. Hilton. My hoodie is actually a Ryerson hoodie. It's my school I go to, but the jersey is a Cowboys jersey. As I said, my dad is a Cowboys fan, so I'm rooting for his team tonight. I'm rooting for Dilly Vanilli tonight over Kevil. Sorry, Kevil. What else? Colts are going to get lit up at Arrowhead. What else? Deshaun Watson is so good outside the pocket, says Trivia. He definitely came to play in the second half. He made some plays. He tried to get his team back in it. It just wasn't enough. And I'm surprised that the Texans, the way their offense played in the first half, was in that game for so long. So that's a credit to the Texans defense for stepping up. A lot of arguing about the Chiefs and the Colts. Dame says Deshaun went downfield like twice and they were both bad throws. Kenny Moore is underrated, says Trivia. Bodo says the big reason during the first half, the Texans giving up huge first downs on three different third and longs. Yeah, the third down offense for the Colts was a huge reason why they won. Without it, and that's a big thing. Frank Reich, number one offense on third down this year, number one third down offense last year. I think there's something to be said about that. What's going on, robot guy? All right, what else we have here? Just a lot of arguing. What's with the Cowboys jersey? I answered that question. Perez says Bears destroy the Eagles 42-0. Ryan Shaw says bad offensive play calling too. Some of those short yardage play calls were kind of dumb. I agree with that. I'm kind of confused why they didn't at least try to run it once. From what I remember, all of the plays on fourth down were passes. I understand by giving the opportunity to rather pass or run with Deshaun Watson, but at the same time, run it once. It's 4th and 1. If you can't get 1 yard, you suck. Chosen says, is it Chosen? Chosen. I worry about the Colts. They sputter in games and always seem to let teams back. Can't put anyone away consistently. The Colts are the underdog. So if you're a Colts fan, I understand why you're worried in that regard. But I think also they're kind of conservative in the second half. They try to run the ball and milk the clock. And it's also interesting that the Colts have a defense that you can sort of count on to make plays this year, which hasn't been a common theme in Colts history dating back to Peyton Manning. But when you look at the Colts, I think more of it is that they're taking the foot off the gas pedal a little bit, and they should just keep going. But if you're not a Colts fan, I don't think you should be worried about the Colts because they're the underdog. They're not really expected to do much. Beating the Texans, I predicted that, but beating the Chiefs would certainly be a pretty big upset. What else do we have? I think that's about it, guys. Chiefs Kingdom all day, says Lady D. And all right, guys, I'm going to go because the game is about to start and I have people at my house. So thanks for tuning in to the recap for the Colts and the Texans, 21-7. Colts take it. If you enjoyed, Gronk, spike that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more. And check out the live stream. Kevil and Dilly Vanilli will be right on in a few minutes for a live stream. So go check that out. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And we'll see you next week. We have a ton of videos coming out. Peace out.